I'm a fan of your shows, like multiple, and
Mhm.
we've been talking for so long. So I'm glad it's finally happening now.
Right, right. Is this we haven't started the episode yet,
No,
though?
no, no.
No,
Okay,
no,
good. All
we
right, just
just
making sure.
Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And this is Ben
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Well, boom, first of all. But second of all, we have a very special guest with us today. We got Andrew Young from Geek Hard. I mean, you've got a radio show, a bunch of podcasts, Back Issue Bloodbath, Geek Hard.
Yeah.
I know I'm forgetting some, but
Well, no, the other ones are over. We used to
Okay.
do Don't Make Me Watch That, which I know you checked out back in the day and thought I was
Yes.
crazy for not liking The Lion King. And and also I did a short program last year called Felons on Film, where me and a friend who was obsessed with true crime talked about films based on true crimes.
oh,
Those shows are still out there. They're still available.
you can still
Right.
listen to them. So yeah, I mean, this is something I used to do. We haven't done it with Michelle, another special guest, but we wanted to bring it back for you, especially for this episode, which is if you could just kind of walk us through, like, 5 to 1, your top 5 comic book characters.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I've been thinking about this today because like that's the thing. It's hard to like narrow it down because there's a lot of characters that you fall in love with, especially when you read as much comics as we have, you know. It's like just it seems like every time you find a really cool character, they become your favorite character for a while. But without a doubt, and it's kind of the reason why I'm here today, my favorite character in comics is Daredevil.
Yeah.
Love him. Love everything about him. Love the fact that there's 3 kind of different versions of him in comics. And I feel like this episode kind of touches on all 3 of them. Number 2 for me would be Green Arrow.
Okay.
So you can see there's a trend. I like tortured heroes that are
Yes, I
heroes that
Dark and brooding variety.
Yeah, well, not so much brooding because they both have personalities, but it's very
True.
much like good at being a hero, hot mess as a human being. That's kind of
Sure.
All right.
so, which leads into my third favorite, Black Widow, who's also
Okay.
a hot mess when it comes to real life, but she's the best here there is at what she does.
That's true.
Yeah. Number 4 is Nick Fury. Just always been something about him. And I guess my 5th one is only a recent kind of revelation, but Jimmy Olsen.
Jimmy Olsen. Interesting.
Jimmy Olsen. Like, have you read the Matt Fraction Jimmy Olsen story from a few years back?
I haven't, but all you need to say is Matt Fraction, and I'll get into it at some point.
Art by Steve Lieber, and it's just a hilarious book. It's
Really, eh?
fantastic. Yeah, and it really kind of, while being a hilarious book, it also deconstructs the Jimmy Olsen of the Silver Age at the same time.
I
Very
figured that
cool.
would be the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say the theme here is that you're just like, you just love people that are really good at their jobs. You know, like they're just
good at their jobs, but screwed up in their life.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm projecting.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do feel bad because I know your stance on Batman, and that's definitely my number 1.
Hey, you can like Batman all you want. It's really, you know what? It's kind of when it comes to Batman, it's the old saying, it's not the band I hate, it's the fans.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about
Right.
there's a number of people out there who just basically believe when they read a Batman story, he has to win everything or it's not a good Batman story.
That's true.
And unfortunately, some of those fans about 20 years ago became writers. And it seems like ever since then, anytime somebody writes Batman, he kind of has to have all the answers and he has to be an asshole to everybody.
Yeah.
And any chance of like having him grow as a person is like shot down.
Yeah.
It's shot in the neck. So
That is true. They're definitely not interested in him as that kind of character. Or there's just like brief moments of it, like in the Flash kind of Flashpoint thing. You get that brief moment of, oh yeah, he's got some connection with Thomas Wayne and all that kind of stuff again. But like, you're right, they just shut it down entirely. They're like, oh, we have the Bat family. Nope, don't trust any of you. There's a backup plan for all of you.
And that's the thing. I get that like comics have always been kind of like, when it comes to the big two, they try to keep the idea that, oh, this has just been happening for 10 years. So they kind of trying to want to keep the characters the same. But I think they go too far with Batman. So it's not so much I hate Batman. It's just I hate the way people think Batman has to be.
I like the way you put it. The fans kind of ruin it because I do feel like they dictate, or I shouldn't say they dictate a lot, but I feel like people who take on those projects, whether it's film or writing, that like they feel like, well, yeah, I guess he's got to be this, or else people will be mad, or let's do this instead of trying to find new ways to make him relevant for like new people, new readers, or new generations.
And I'll admit, when it comes to maturity of fans and everything, it took me a long time to get to this point. Like back in 2009, I was going to conventions with a shirt that said Batman sucks just to piss people off. So much so that artist Ken Lashley was bringing all of his gear to artist Sally, saw me, stopped and said, I should kick your fucking ass. And I was like, it's just a shirt, man. And he's like, fair enough. And they kept going.
I like your picks. I especially like the Black Widow pick. I feel like I don't hear too many people praise her. Maybe that's just the people I'm around, but I'm a big fan of hers.
Oh yes, there's some great stuff out there, especially in the past like 6 years. Some really good writing has come out. I thought Mark Waid and I can't remember the name of the artist now, but they did a really cool storyline. It was about 10 issues long. There's also another one done by, I don't remember the name of the writer because he's actually, we'll say he's redacted because he's one of those ones who we're kind of glad is not working anymore. But it was still a good story. But yeah, there's some really good stuff out there for the Widow. And then of course Kelly Thompson's run recently was fantastic.
So I'm gonna have to get into the Kelly Thompson stuff. I don't know if this is unfortunate or not, but we obviously on this show tend to lean more into the film and television stuff. I feel like Ben has done it a couple of times too, but just kind of like read some stuff before shows or movies come out. But I feel like I did it a lot before, and the pandemic really put me in a space where I could do it again. Like just read, not to like get ahead of a TV show or movie coming out, but just read because I like reading the comics.
Yeah, and for me, the pandemic took me out of that because I'm like, no, I'm spending too much time in Destiny now. So it's full on video games as opposed to like comics, which used to be. But I mean, like the good bridge point here is the media side of it, like the visual media side of it is just so much more accessible at that point, right? It became a weekly talking point through the pandemic, especially with WandaVision, right? Everyone got into that. So it's just become this huge thing. It's a good meeting point for all, I think. It's great.
Right. Definitely.
What do you say, guys? Do you want to jump into episode 8 of She-Hulk?
Yeah, let's take a crack at this. Yeah, let's script it and rip it. I was really hoping you would do that. Yes.
So I guess before we go into like, the deep dive of it, are we all on the same page that this was a good episode, or am I wrong here?
This is a great episode.
This is a fantastic episode. I had no idea how they were going to fit Leapfrog into this and like establish him enough and be like, but the way they did, I'm like, I don't want to spend any time with this character. This is great.
Yeah. It's a character that in the comics that, like, and again, like, okay, so there's 2 Leapfrogs from the comics. There's Eugene, who we see here, and there's his father, Vincent, who was the original Leapfrog, who the character of Vincent is kind of referenced here as like a very successful, special client. In the comics, he was a failed scientist. He never would have been able to afford this law firm. In fact, he was a failed scientist. The only really good invention he came up with was electric powered leaping coils that he could attach to his feet.
Right.
And so because he was a failed inventor, he decided to use them to start a life of crime. He became a failed villain, and Daredevil kicked his ass. His first appearance was in Daredevil 25, and Daredevil kind of repeatedly kicked his ass. And it was kind of made of a joke later on, years later, that Daredevil was like, yeah, I have the worst rogues gallery. And that was like one of the examples. And then Eugene found his father's suit while he's in prison and decided he wanted to change the legacy of the Leapfrog and become Frogman, a vigilante. But he unfortunately is an idiot. Not as much of an idiot as the Eugene in this, but an idiot. And so he ends up hurting himself a lot more than helping. And his first appearance was in Marvel Team Up 121 with Spider-Man.
So
Nice.
I think that's great. I did not know that part of like that he tried to like change the legacy, because I feel like the first scene we see is him describing to Jen how he was trying to stop these thieves, and I was like, but I'm pretty sure he's supposed to be a villain. And I feel like that's kind of, I know this episode was the credit goes to Cody Ziegler, who like I followed on Twitter before this, and I know how much of a fan he is, and I feel like he really had some deep cuts here, and I like if it is him that he played with that idea of like villain and hero with this.
Yeah, it feels very much like he kind of merged the two characters from the comics into one, so that he's trying to be the vigilante, but it's for very pompous and vain reasons.
Yeah,
so.
definitely very
vain.
very, very vain in that. I love oh my god, I love how the whole thing, like, it makes me question whether or not he genuinely was in that situation, or he just like was testing the boots, they burned up, and he just like, hey, I'm gonna go after this guy instead, just because I look like an idiot or something like that. It really makes me wonder whether or not he did that.
I feel like he did it.
I think he did it. Yeah.
Because they're showing he doesn't really have self-preservation that way. Like he said in court, I use jet fuel, and he was like proud of it. I think, and the story doesn't make him look good.
Dumb.
No,
it does not.
So, and he's telling it. We know he's telling the story. So I think he just did that, what we saw on screen.
Yeah.
I find it funny how, like, a few episodes ago, it showed how Jen was willing to embarrass herself in court, and that got her the win, versus this is clearly him embarrassing himself and not getting the win. It's really hilarious here. It's wonderful.
So basically what happens here is he's trying to engage her as a put her on retainer and come after Luke Jacobson. Is that his name? Luke, the guy.
Luke Jacobson, the designer. Yeah.
The designer. And I loved their interaction when she went to go see him. They call her like a greasy buffalo or something like that. It was there was some good stuff there, but she had to go against her tailor, and I like that he immediately got angry at her and ripped her stuff up.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
How about that response of hers to be like, I'm gonna be more upset about talking to my tailor than talking to Bruce the way she did when he was flying off to Sakaar or wherever he was flying, right? The idea of like, I'm just going to tell you I'm going to take this job, where this is a bigger conflict of interest to her just because the clothing. It's wildly hilarious to me.
I mean, I think the show showed that it wasn't necessarily that she thought this was a bigger conflict. I think she just thought like,
more
why do I have to do another conflict of interest case?
That's fair. She did want to pass it off immediately.
She was trying to give it to Pug, and he was like, no thanks. But yeah, I think this leads into what I felt was like a good courtroom scene that I could follow. Not that I haven't really have a problem with any of the stuff, but I like that it was like she was going up against another competent lawyer in Matt. Like it wasn't like, oh, she gets to steamroll the scene because she's the hero and we don't really care about who she's going up against. I thought that made this scene even better. We know Luke and we obviously know Matt from other stuff, but like the fact that it was like, oh, she can't just steamroll this scene. I like that it forced her to try and push back, but obviously she doesn't win. But I really liked the way this scene was written and how it played out.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done, and also the introduction of Matt Murdock as Luke's lawyer, and the fact that it was done very classic, like TV guest stars. Yes. It's like, here's my lawyer, and then the lawyer gets his own entrance, shows up, sorry I'm late, and everything. And a lot of people sometimes forget that the reason why Matt Murdock is Fuckboy Matt is that he's extremely charming.
Yes.
Like, that's the thing. When it comes to, he's able to hide all of his hot messness and be an extremely charming individual. So when he came in, it's like some of the comments he was like, he's lying.
Yes, I know.
Don't ask me how I know, but I know is sort of thing. It's like, yeah, well, we all know he's lying. That was very much like a classic sort of like, look at me, I know what I'm doing kind of thing.
I really like that moment because like he does this great job of being like, you're treating this like this is just a normal case. No, we can't give up his client list and all that stuff because these are super. But he also has the moment of like, aha, I know he's just, like, it felt really comic booky. Like, don't ask me how I know, but I know. But and then them kind of undercutting with, yeah, we know he's lying, obviously.
Yeah. And of course, also there finally, you've been waiting for it. The whole Sokovia Accords thing. It was a quick one-off line. Gave the attention it deserved.
Yes.
Didn't deserve any more than that.
Care.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like, okay, one line, appropriate place, appropriate show. Get over it. Done.
Yeah,
we're good.
Yeah. But what I liked about the Matt argument was that it shows, obviously, because he's seasoned, that he has actually incorporated everything about his life. Like he's not just looking at it as the one thing like Jen has been doing in previous episodes and trying to isolate these things. She hasn't taken a look at the whole picture of like, yes, we're in the courtroom, but we're in the courtroom for superhero stuff. And that means that it can't just be give us the list. There's no reason not to, because it's like, well, no, that this is the reason, and we're putting people at risk. And I feel like it made him look more seasoned in an interesting way, like just someone who knows what he's doing and has been able to merge everything together.
I mean, especially because the stakes are high for him, right? Because he's he's one of the clients, and it would have been like, whoa, this is a conflict of interest. You can't represent this guy, because immediately the court's thrown out. Like I'm sure the case would be thrown out, right? If it's just like, oh, this is why you can't do this. But I mean, still interesting, because like the thing is, Jen doesn't have a secret identity, as he points out later on. He does, and it's just wonderful to see that. You're right, incorporated into his argument, but and fuckboy Matt thing, just you can see how, okay, you're actually fighting for yourself now. It seems a little bit that's a fuckboy move.
I think he might be, but what I liked about his delivery of the lines is if I didn't know who Matt Murdock was somehow, I wouldn't think he was fighting for himself. It looked like he just knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he looked like a professional for sure.
Yeah. And well, the other thing is that Murdoch, when it comes to that sort of thing, Murdoch is more concerned about the lives of others than himself.
Yeah.
So
he just
I feel very much it was more, he just so happens to be in that group as well. Right. So I don't think it was so much self-preservation as it was just that would be the route he'd taken anyway.
Gotcha.
Even if it wasn't.
And he mentions, like, it's not just them. You're opening it up to the people in their lives who didn't actually ask to be part of that.
Yes. Very important part of the secret identity argument.
So yeah, the whole case gets thrown out, which is great. Or sorry, no, just that aspect of Jen's argument gets thrown out. But then when Eugene opens his big mouth and talks about the jet fuel, I know it's that Matt smelled it, but it's still like he's so proud to say that he used jet fuel. Then the whole case gets thrown out because obviously he went against the rules.
Dummy. But this also makes me go like, how good was Jen at her job in this situation? Because like that's usually that would have been sussed out, right, in the whole questioning period, or like, do you at the same time she obviously doesn't care about this guy.
Well, unfortunately, I think Jen is approaching the situation, a situation she doesn't want to be in,
right?
With having the assumption that the guy at least wouldn't do something as stupid as put something as jet fuel in his boots,
right?
He was assuming that he was actually using the outfit as prescribed. And unfortunately, a lot of people wouldn't think that somebody would be that stupid to put a chemical that's far more powerful than that suit be able to contain in his boots.
And I think that's the perfect way to put it, because I was thinking like, oh, maybe she was just like, well, she really thought she had them with the give us the client list and we'll probably find a bunch of people that have it. But I think you're right. It's more just that she's like, well, why would you use it inappropriately?
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So then this is where I see more of the fuckboy Matt coming over to her at the bar. legalese.
Yeah. Gets her a martini, an apple
Yeah.
teeny.
An apple teeny.
Yeah.
What a wild swing. If you're
Well-
getting someone a drink at a bar and you're pulling that move, is an apple teeny honestly what you're going to send over?
It's green.
It's
Yeah,
it's
he's-
green. I
That's-
get it.
that's what he's going for.
That's
He's
his tongue in
saying,
cheek
I
thing.
see you. I see
But
you
Yeah.
over this.
yeah, except he doesn't
Well,
because
he
he's
does.
blind.
No, he does
He does see her.
with his sixth
I've
sense,
been told
which she
you're
refers
green,
to as
and I don't
echolocation.
know what. Oh no, he would know what green is because of his childhood. But
That's
Yeah,
right. In
either
fact,
way.
green was the chemical that took his sight. So
oh,
there
fair
you go.
enough. That would have been. Oh,
There you go.
he's only got her. He only sees her. There you
Yeah,
go.
Oh my god!
But
But the
I
thing
love their
also
banter.
I want to point out is if
Yep.
you know like when he walks into the courtroom and when he walks around the bar,
Mhm.
you know he's got his walking stick and
Mm-hmm.
everything. To me, that's always been Matt is swinging his big stick. He's just that's kind of like a yeah, this is me, baby, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
make
in my
way. Here I
opinion.
come.
He's
like
he's
that.
just like, I don't need this, but I got to put it on the show. And I'm like, it's patronizing, man. It's not cool. That's funny. Yeah.
So yeah, look, yeah, I like his whole like it's pretty weird of you to make fun of a blind man's clothing, and he explains why he's there. Obviously, this is a one for them case so that he can continue to do his pro
Mhm.
bono work in Hell's Kitchen.
Mhm.
And I think he does get to Jen. I like her fourth wall break of like it's not just me, right? We're all feeling this.
Yeah.
It's
So
like,
I
oh
was
yeah,
like, you know what,
sexual
I am.
tensions there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I
right
was like,
there.
I
You
am
cut it
on
with a
board with
knife.
this.
So even a blind man could see it.
Yes, exactly. But I think again another instance of Matt driving home, like everything needs to be taken into account. So you know, like you want to help, you want to do it in the one way, but Jen can help people when society fails. She-Hulk can help
Yep.
when the law fails.
Yeah.
Put in pretty simple terms, and I obviously that works on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
It does. Just, here's the
Uh,
vigilante code, baby. This is what it is. Just you make your own judgments and do it.
Exactly. Nothing bad
Yeah.
could happen. So they get pulled in different directions.
Mhm.
He gets a call and she gets the Todd
Mhm.
messages, which even just reading them, I was annoyed at those messages when he's like,
Oh, yeah.
I was led to
Oh,
believe this was a
God.
24/7 thing. And I was like, oh my goodness.
So
Yeah.
passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Terrible.
We kind of take a break here to do some kind of positive. I genuinely don't know what they're doing with this Todd character.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Like, there's been a lot of people that have been like, "Oh, Todd is actually part of this whole intelligentsia thing," and I'm like, "Yeah, but wouldn't he have come off as at least a bit smarter at some point in
Mhm.
the story?"
Yeah.
They really haven't tipped enough of the hat for him to be anything more than a comedic foil. As far as I can-
Exactly.
Yeah, because
There's no
he
threat
invites her
there.
there, and I thought there was going to be something that like
He's
at
like,
least hinted at what his plan was.
right.
But he's just like, hey, I bought a Wakandan spear for $1 million, and then tries to get with her.
Yeah, and
And-
like there's some people out there that are like I saw a recent thing today saying, "Oh, he bought a vibranium spear, probably to make a vibranium needle to pierce her skin." I'm like,
They
I
already
don't
did
know,
that.
guys.
I'm like,
Yeah, you're giving him way too much credit.
yeah, I mean, if that was the case, don't you think the element of surprise would be relevant? It's just like, why would you tell someone, oh, now I do have vibranium in my
Yeah.
possession
Yeah.
and I spent $1 million? It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, where are they going with this? Sure, he might be a part of the intelligentsia and is trying to get their favor and getting like, if the leader is at the end of this, like you've said before, then is he trying to gain favor with the leader? Be like, I am, the ultimate.
Because at first I really thought like, oh, he's collecting information so they know how to pierce their skin. Like in the
That's what I thought.
first time you
Mm.
see him.
Yeah, that's what
Then he kind of just showed up with Mallory book, which gave her an idea, but still just seemed like, oh, that's a long. She could have just
Yeah.
remembered she went on those dates. She didn't have to see him there. And then, and then this thing where I'm like, I don't know what's happening because they've already got
Yeah.
her blood. He doesn't need to like get it again.
I
don't
really think it's that I have a feeling that they got this actor He's
Yes.
a comedic actor. He's been in other stuff.
Mhm.
And they decided we want to write more stuff for him. That's what I really feel
Yes.
like what it is.
That's gotta be.
I think, okay, if we're meeting, because the show clearly does have an agenda to be like, this is what it's like to live from the perspective of a woman, all that kind of stuff. Maybe this is just a character that's meant to be like, yes, this is just creepy. This is just how it escalates. This is how we can't get out of a situation. Because at this point, it's genuinely creeping me out. You know what I mean? How he's got access to her in the way and privilege that he does, and how he's trying to do all these kind of things. Like it, and he's not taking the hints, right? He literally like he touched her, right, against her consent. So it's one of those things where I'm like, is that the point of this character, to show you that even if they're not a threat, they're still an annoyance and they still have an access to you? Because that's how I feel about this character at this point. He doesn't pose any threat. He doesn't do anything other than show us realistically, yeah, this is how annoying some assholes can be and what lengths they go to. And if so, then they're doing a great job. But I don't see him coming to a villainous role at any point in time convincingly.
I mean, he's already a villain in our life, but I don't know if he's like a master manipulator.
Right. Not the super villain like the guy with the crowbar in the other episode, but just regular creep.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we tried to do some digging, and I think we all came up with, we don't know what's going on here. But
we don't know what's going on.
There's one more episode left, so I guess we'll find out what their plan was, or if they get a second season, maybe there's more for him to do. But basically,
God, I hope not.
I mean, if they have a good story, I don't mind him coming back. I'm a bit confused at his involvement this late in the game.
I think everyone is right now, because it's weird that he's becoming more persistent now. You know, it's just like, oh God, when they saw him again after the courtroom scene, I'm like, no, this is weird now. This is uncomfortable.
Yeah. And this isn't the only time he pops up in this episode.
Nope.
No. Does it again.
But we will get, because I feel like that'll be a big chunk of this episode is talking about that.
Yeah.
But before that, Jen gets the call from Leapfrog being like, you gotta help me, I'm being attacked. And we get into some great Daredevil and She-Hulk stuff now. Well, She-Hulk and Jen get to be a part of this.
Starts with a classic superhero misunderstanding, and
and I like that they called it out when she was like, "Why didn't you tell me that before?" He's like, "Why did you try to beat me up before?"
Yep. Both very valid perspectives. Both of them.
I'm a fan of them working together. Like I really,
me too. Totally.
I really thought, like, I think before the show even came out, when everyone's like, yeah, I think Daredevil's, and I was like, I mean, yeah, I guess so. They're lawyers, but I didn't know how he would mesh as Daredevil, because I saw what they did with Matt Murdock in No Way Home, and I was like, yeah, that could work with Jen pretty easily, but I didn't know how that translates to Daredevil, and I thought they did a good job of not making him a joke while also still, he's not as broody as he was in the Netflix series.
Yeah.
Right. Well, in this situation, he doesn't need to be as broody, you know, like, again, there's some, like, I know there's some people who weren't a big fan of the Daredevil series, but myself, I really enjoyed the way they handled him in the Netflix series. But they decided, to very much focus on his darker stories, which is a part of him, but it's not the whole part of him. And in this, it was, again, it's that kind of charm thing when she says to him, when she's trying to figure out, like, what the hell his character is and everything, he goes,
I'm Daredevil.
You never heard of me? And what I love is there was a sting. You could hear in the background the Daredevil theme playing for a few seconds. And that's something that I've liked what they've done recently. They did it in both Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness and in Ms. Marvel. When they mentioned mutants, they played a little bit of the X-Men music.
Yes.
And in this,
which I really liked.
Yeah, I really liked too. And in this, they did the little Daredevil stinger, which I always enjoyed the opening credit sequence for Daredevil.
Those were great opening credits.
That was a good opening
I think I liked, I don't really remember the Iron Fist ones, but I'm pretty sure I liked them just like I liked because I liked all the opening credits for the Netflix. I thought they did really good jobs. Whether or not people liked the show, I thought their opening credits were pretty engaging.
Yeah, Totally.
Sure.
And I think when it came to the Netflix shows, Daredevil was the one that, even though it had 3 different showrunners, still felt like the same show all the way through.
Yeah,
That's
I
true.
can give
Yes.
I definitely think that it didn't suffer from having a bunch of different people take over.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they, as you said, they had the classic hero misunderstanding and realized, oh, we need to get Leapfrog, not save Leap. Or She-Hulk realizes she shouldn't be trying to save Leapfrog because he's
Mhm.
actually kidnapped Luke Jacobson, and they're gonna go to the lily pad and
Right. Now,
and break him out.
outside of the lily pad, which of course has the big neon sign,
Yes.
on the post, on the street post there,
Yeah.
there was a QR code, and the QR code leads to a She-Hulk issue from 2014 during Charles Soule's run,
Mhm.
where Daredevil and She-Hulk face off in the courtroom for the very first time
Mm.
Nice.
over a civil suit involving a 90-year-old Steve Rogers.
Wow.
And when this series got announced, I was hoping, that maybe when they got to the point where, because when they announced Daredevil was in it, when they got to the Daredevil thing, there's like, maybe it would be a civil case with old Steve Rogers, because
Yeah.
in the movies, Steve Rogers is old now, but I knew I was asking for too much.
Yeah.
But at least there's still the comic by Charles Soule that you can go read.
I have enjoyed that they've been linking, because you get to like just read it for free, right? That's not like a
Yes.
sample. You get to read
it's
the
a
whole comic. Yeah.
Free
I
digital
always-
comic.
I always look at them like, am I gonna pause this and scan this code, or am I just gonna keep watching? I'm gonna just go back and scan.
It is such a like disruptive thing to know that they're doing this all the time, and if you really care about it, you gotta like do the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, because I saw it. Like I think it was pretty prominently placed in this
Mhm.
episode, and I was just like,
Mhm.
I'll come back to that. Like I was just, I'm just gonna keep going with this moment.
If you do go back to it, it's a good read.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah. In fact, there's a whole episode of Back Issue Bloodbath that we brought out at the beginning of She-Hulk coming out, where we talk about the Charles Soule run, because everybody else is going to talk about the Dan Slott, so we covered the Charles Soule run.
I think that's good, because that's what I read ahead of time, was the Dan Slott run, because I heard Tatiana Maslany on a podcast say that's what she read. But I think many people have pointed out that they're taking from different runs. It's not just Dan Slott.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
There's also the John Byrne kind of feel. Actually, at the start of the pandemic, I got to interview Renee Witterstatter, who was the editor for John Byrne's run on She-Hulk. And it was a lot. She told me a lot about how his writing style was more to just pop Renee than to like if this joke makes Renee laugh, then we'll put it in the comics. Sort of thing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that kind of elements there. The Dan Slott, I think, with this episode especially, the Charles Soule.
Definitely. I do like, so they get there, and I like that it's Daredevil constantly reminding her, like, this isn't your thing. Like, you don't do this ever. Like, we're gonna do stealth because I actually do this for like a living.
Yeah.
It is one of those great checks of just like, no, just like this is how we do this, or collaborate, or like neither one of them were willing to collaborate, which is hilarious to me.
I do love the math joke.
Yes,
he keeps adding
That's
it
not
up
how
wrong.
that math works out. That was great. Yeah, so I liked that math joke. I liked the goons versus henchmen thing.
that was
Yeah,
great.
that was good.
That was great. That was a very good explanation for those who are unaware. And then she's like, still whatever, goons, henchmen, whatever. I'm like, no.
But the heartbeat thing, I was also a fan, because as I said, I was pretty much on board with them getting together. Like, I didn't think I would be, but I was like, yeah, get together. When he was like, I can hear your heartbeat too, I was like, oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do it, Matt. Go for it.
And it's funny, during that scene, it's a pretty obvious lighting choice, but she's illuminated in green light and he's illuminated in red light, which I thought was pretty cool.
But yeah, he gets to do a MCU version of a hallway fight.
Yeah, it's a truncated version of the hallway fight. And again, this is a show that isn't as violent as the Netflix series. This is supposed to be, even though we're covering a lot of subject matter that is more of a mature audience thing, it's done in a way that it's younger viewers are more like, it's more susceptible for younger viewers than the Netflix stuff.
I think this would be, I'm not saying that moving forward it'll always be for kids, but this Daredevil stuff felt more younger audience friendly.
Yeah, it felt
Yeah.
safer.
Yes, but I did still like the fight. I think him jumping around, I was like, oh wow, this is just not like the Netflix thing. But I was like, I guess this makes sense. Like he's in the MCU now. He's gonna be.
He's gonna have a bit more of a spring in his step.
Yes.
Whereas before they were going for realistic martial arts, now they're going for the stylized.
And to show the wear and tear on him, and I guess it would be hard. Like, yeah.
And this is much more like movie ninja, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, or like parkour or whatever you want to call it.
But then when all those guys show up in the hall after he takes out those first few guys, he turns around.
Yeah.
It's like that was very much the tease of like, oh, we're gonna see like a straight up hallway fight, and then She-Hulk shows up, Hulk smash, which I feel is a little bit of foreshadowing with those words, She-Hulk smash.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I was so conditioned for it to be a long fight that I actually didn't expect her to burst through. I was like, yeah, like we're gonna do it. He's gonna go for it. He's gonna take these people out. And
exact same feeling.
Exact same feeling. You got to remember, it's a comedy series, so of course they're gonna go for the big joke.
Yeah.
And I thought it was effective. I'm sure the people who said they ruined Daredevil would point to that scene as she emasculated him.
Yeah, because that's the problem. It's sort of like these people are expecting, what they've seen before. It's like, but it's a comedy.
Yes.
It's like they are commenting on things and they are doing commentary about things, but they're doing it in a very lighthearted manner.
Yep.
So
they're just not getting that tonal shift, right? They're just not getting it. They're like, this is what Daredevil should be, and it goes back to the hating the fandom part of
and so
side of things, right?
As I said, it comes down to there's three sides to Daredevil. There's fuckboy Matt, I'm the best at everything, and then there's the kind of, because when he first came out, he was a Spider-Man clone. So in the comics, when he was originally written, he was very jokey and everything like that, because that's the way Stan Lee wrote single heroes at that time. And it wasn't until Frank Miller that kind of went away. But certain writers have brought it back, like Mark Waid and things like that, to levels of effect. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And here, I think they handled the jokey side of Daredevil much better than some of the recent comics that have tried.
Yeah, like when their first fight, when She-Hulk and Daredevil are first fighting, and he goes, "Looks like it appears my ass still hasn't been whooped." I was like, yeah, like as you said, like kind of like a Spider-Man type thing. But I was like, it also makes sense in this thing that he's trying to like, show off against it. I like.
Definitely much. He's the cock of the walk here.
Yeah, I like when you pointed out the movement here, because the first time I saw it, I was like, "Oh crap! Are we gonna have an episode 2 Yoda moment where all of a sudden I don't believe any of the mechanics and the physics involved in the movement whatsoever, and just backflipping all over the place?" But it was relatively contained enough that I was like, "Okay, that's not what's happening here." But it definitely genuinely scared me for a little bit, having the comedic, more animated movement, like you said.
Definitely more animated.
Yeah. But I like that they're leaning more into the Daredevil aspect of it, because now I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, that's a dare. That this is amazing. This is so much better. Like the increase of that comedic effect really worked for me. It really did. I liked the way they handled this for sure.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, they go in, they save Luke.
And during that thing, She-Hulk is still giving legal advice.
And I like that Matt again is like, no, yes. I mean, you could go that way, but it's pretty shaky. Like,
yeah.
He's like, "Are you a lawyer too?" He's like, "No, I just watch a lot of legal shows."
Yeah. At what point does she call him someone that's dressed in like where mustard and ketchup is the color scheme?
That's before they go to the lily pad.
It's before the lily pad. Okay. Yeah, I just really appreciate that.
It's pretty daring to have your colors be mustard and ketchup.
Now I personally think when they do the Daredevil series, he will quickly morph into the red suit only, or another suit of some kind. I think they did this specifically as a short thing, because in the comics, it was only the first 6 issues of the entire Daredevil run that he wore this outfit. And it was right at the beginning. It was issue 7 that people didn't like the costume. People were writing in, they didn't like the costume. So Stan Lee went, "How about you just make it all red?" And that was pretty much it.
So it was red and yellow like
Yes.
this to
It was
begin
yeah,
with?
it
had a
was red,
couple
yellow,
of-
and black.
Right.
Red, yellow, and black for the first 6 issues because the idea is that he fastened it out of the colors of his father battling Jack Murdoch's ring jacket. Like he'd wear the big ring jacket, the robe to the ring for boxing matches.
Okay, that's cool. I like that backstory because I'm
Yeah.
like, Iron Man color scheme's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's gonna go to red. I was wondering if they were gonna be like, oh, this is just his LA suit. And, when he's in New York, they'll keep the red one.
I'd see. I thought they were transitioning into a full gold suit, but I like what you're saying. It's like, yeah, that's a nod to the first 6, and then
Yeah.
they're probably going to go back to full red. Now, because I know during the Netflix series, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, there was a lot of commentary about the mask not being comic accurate to how, like, the V shape and all that kind of stuff. And they kept the same nose design here. What are your thoughts on that? Like,
I'm okay with that because the idea is that in the Netflix series and in this here, this is less a mask and more of a helmet.
right.
To protect his skull.
Yeah.
So that's why the front part has more like of a harder shell. Yeah, so I think it works fine. Like even when in the first and third season of the Daredevil Netflix series, when he was just wearing the black wrap around his head, you could see that he was wearing a wrap around some kind of like skull protection.
Right.
So yeah, so I think it looks fine.
So it was a logistical thing. It just like, because I always looked at the Ben Affleck one, and I'm like, this is a stupid ass mask. What are you doing here? Like, what? I get that it opens up your ability to smell, but why do you need so much of your face to smell? It doesn't make sense to me.
There's so much I have to say about that 2003 film because there was a lot. It actually, like before they started the film, they actually had a good script and a good idea,
right?
And everything just got whittled away. If you ever want to do a special, and they took Coolio out of the movie, exactly. If you ever want to do a special about the 2003 Daredevil, I can bring you a lot of info. So
I was going to ask you if you would fight with that. I'm glad you brought it up.
I'm thinking we definitely got to do it for sure.
But yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that movie because I only saw it the once. I don't have strong opinions one way or the other. I just was like, yep, I saw it.
I wasn't angry with it because it's dumb to get angry about stuff like that.
Right.
But it's definitely like when it came from the script to the director's cut to what ended up in theaters, they're all very different stories. So there you go.
So they basically make it so that Leapfrog leaps out the window and I guess just breaks his legs. Is that what I'm to understand?
While yelling, there's no shame in retreat.
Yeah. And I feel like they captured the essence of both Leapfrogs perfectly there because, again, he always makes a fool out of himself. He always makes the wrong move, and he always hurts himself. So there you got all three in one.
Yeah, when you said up top, I didn't know that ahead of time, but I was like, I feel like they did a really good job with Leapfrog.
Yeah.
So yeah, they meet back up. They get to bring back the math joke, and decide let's skip the pleasantries and go home together.
Yeah,
and they fuck. Which again, I'm gonna say right now, if it had come to the end of the episode and they didn't fuck, I'd be like, they kind of missed the mark on Daredevil.
Exactly. Yeah, because then you're expecting some sort of like joint series thing down the line of like, they're keeping it open to make sure that happens.
Yeah, no, it was just a fun night of passion. That's what it was. Yeah. And capped off perfectly with the walk of shame.
Yes.
Daredevil carrying his boots down the street.
He was very pleasant. He's like, hi, good morning.
Very pleasant. It was at that point. I know they're doing the boot thing to be like, okay, this is what a walk of shame looks like, but like, there's no logical reason why he would hold his boots at that point, right?
I don't know. They could have been like, again, have you ever walked around in like, like workman's boots, like steel toe boots?
I have.
For long hours.
But I would assume it's a lot better than the actual ground. Where
he was walking on the grass. The grass is much softer.
Okay, that's fair.
That he just didn't want to have to put them back on. He was really this is
too.
easier than to put everything back together.
Sure. It was because it was to me like, oh, they're clearly going for this is the gender role reversal thing of like, oh, he can't get the bra off kind of scene where she was trying to do the same for his zipper for the superhero suit. And I was just like, this is hilarious. This is actually really, really funny at this point.
Yeah, totally.
But
I'm glad they hooked up.
Basically, everything after that was very effectively creepy for me.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I'm going to say right now. They should have done 10 episodes instead of 9, and they should have given the last 10 minutes of this episode its own episode to breathe.
I agree.
So that they could have actually did a bit more to make it not so all creepy all at once.
It's like 2 acts of non-creepiness with a little bit of Todd, and then a full act of creepiness and like just unsettling.
And well, that's the thing, because again, it's a comedy series. If they had given this part its entire episode, they could have played a lot more comedy in it. Because like the idea is like some of the things they were setting up here were meant to be like, you know, social commentary jokes.
Yes,
but they came off just as social commentary.
Correct.
Because nothing was given time to breathe.
No, it's all happening very so like. Well, one, I thought for sure like, oh, Nikki's gonna come out and try and kill her or something like. And I like that they had that landed as a joke when she came out like Wolverine instead, and I was just like, oh, thank goodness, okay, Nikki's not the bad guy. But the whole time like Jen being like, so what's gonna happen? Am I gonna get fridged? Is it gonna be a Red Hulk? Like I was just like, this is actually creeping me out. And then they get to the gala, and everyone gets not, or everyone's winning, and I was like, that's weird, but I guess everyone's just gonna go along with it.
It was kind of making the comment of like all the women that are nominated win, because we're trying to say like, look, we're trying to show excellence in women, but without actually putting the effort to show the excellence of women.
But also try to address an issue of like non-competition at the same time, but it devalues the whole thing. And I would have to rewatch this whole scene. But what was the racial diversity of everyone there? Because it seemed to me heavily leaning to women of color in this, more so than white women. So I don't know if that was specifically done as a point of the, like, you're going through extra hardships, whatever, and like this is superhero adversity.
I only saw Mallory Book and the second woman.
And the first woman who was Asian.
The first woman and Mallory Book were the only 2 people of color I saw, but it seemed like there was a bunch of people on stage, so I didn't really see that.
Because I need to pay attention to that more, because like to me, I'm like, and this is why I agree with you, this needed a whole episode to unpack, because I'm like, I would have talked about, oh, okay, so they made the Asian lawyer give a model minority kind of response. They made Mallory give an angry response. And then She-Hulk gives
Mallory didn't give an angry response. She gave a truthful
and I think
response.
that was an example of
very
a
truthful.
Joke. I think that was an example of them trying to do a joke that just didn't come off like a joke, because it was happening in such quick succession.
Yes.
But I don't think she gave an angry response.
Right, because that's why it felt like you guys are saying it's a joke, and I'm like, it just felt angry to me. And I'm like, and that's why I'm like, you're right.
She's as angry as she always is. I don't think it was
true.
Particularly angry. That's how she speaks.
True. It's very to the point.
But so yeah, Jen starts to thank her family and friends. But then,
which I gotta jump in and say, throughout the series, love Mark Lynn-Baker. He's been doing a great job as the dad. I know you guys have been enjoying him as well.
He's been great. He's been great. And the mom, are you cold? Do you want my jacket?
The mom being like,
great
I'm like,
dad
oh, man,
material.
But so it starts out kind of, I mean, you know that they're using stuff from her phone, so it doesn't really ever feel that funny. It just feels invasive. But like seeing the pictures of Steve, and you're like, oh, that's a joke because she likes his ass, and it's a picture of his butt. But I'm like, but I know where this is going, so this is very upsetting. I don't have time to laugh at that.
Exactly.
I think it worked better for me than you guys, but I can see what you're saying. I think I enjoyed the idea of having it be scary while they're still doing jokes at the same time,
which is fine, but it's just, I feel like it wasn't given its proper due. Like, think about it here. The Daredevil stuff ends, and then of course her paralegal shows up and is like, you got to get ready for the thing. It's like, well, just last night she got Luke back on to do her dress again.
Right.
So
That's a
how
good
does
point.
she have the dress at her place? Like,
Yeah.
whereas if it was episode end and then we start the new episode, it isn't even a thought because you're
Right.
like,
You're just like, oh yeah, time
oh,
passed.
time passes.
You're
Exactly.
very, very right to bring that up.
And so like that's the thing. It felt like from the get-go of there, it was just ramping up and could have used more time, not even so much to alleviate the creepiness, but just to make it a bit more logically sound.
Yeah.
Yes. I'll agree that I didn't even think about that, but that's a big kind of world breaking thing where you're just like, yeah, how he ripped up her dress. So like it's not like he was like, oh yeah, I just needed to finish this.
Yeah, and it's
like
under
hours.
24 hours, and I don't
Yeah.
think Luke went home and just started working on the outfit.
Yeah.
I
You're
think
entirely
after
right
being
about that.
kidnapped, you'd probably
Yeah,
want to go
he-
see a loved one, or if you don't have that, just want to at least unwind.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
even let's say he did suppress his emotions, which is not advised, showed up to work the next day and only worked on that as a priority. He still destroyed the work he already put into it previously in that other scene too. So it's like, and I'm not convinced he would still work on it while he was in that, like, I'm beefing with She-Hulk right now situation, right? So that great point to that. Fantastic point. Because yeah, it's the argument would be it's at nighttime, it's a gala. I'm like, okay, still a day's worth of work with the trauma of being kidnapped.
More than a day's worth of work, because when
Exactly.
we saw him, he'd clearly been working on it for a while, and he's
Exactly.
still rushing me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that is a good point and a very good reason why it should have been something. Still worked for me, but yes, obviously they needed to make it a separate episode because that.
And of course, when it got to the climax of her hulking out,
right?
Again, it kind of once again foreshadowed earlier when she said She-Hulk smash. She smashed up a hell of a lot of stuff there.
Right.
So yeah,
she did it. She did a full, and she's like growling like the Hulk has in past movies. So yeah, she's
so her credibility ruined out in public.
Yeah,
which is what
Wow,
intelligentsia
they put like revenge porn on the screen.
Yeah,
like,
pretty much.
I was just like, this is the part not for kids. I just feel like this is rough stuff.
Yeah.
Just an interesting tidbit. A lot of the photos of the guys were of the crew.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Oh, okay. So nice. They all get to be meta Hulk mashes. Good times.
Yeah, so she's that's in front of her family, in front of her peers.
Yep.
Made it look ridiculous, and
she has a very understandable emotional response, and I guess if this is what intelligentsia wanted, I guess they succeeded because everyone's afraid of her.
They wanted. This is definitely what they wanted. They
wanted
her
they're
to
saying
bad.
out loud like, why she shouldn't have taken Hulk's powers. We need to show you how dumb she is. She doesn't deserve it.
Yeah, and like I hate the part where it's just like, I should just slut, and I'm like, wait, what? Really? They're just gonna throw that in where it seems like the most impactful thing out of, and the most cohesive thing out of all that was the revenge porn, because everything else prior to that was just like, this is just weak ass shit on someone's phone.
Yeah,
but again,
think about who they're trying to.
Yeah, exactly.
Say.
The stating of them saying she's a slut like that out front was basically showing the kind of juvenile banal nature of a troll and how they don't say anything smart.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. They just hold ridiculous standards.
They would say all of it. They would say, hey, she should, because I'm sure the thinking would be like, here are my logical reasons, which is she doesn't deserve this. And then I'm going to say what I really think, which is she's a slut. And which I guess that kind of leads me to believe that maybe Todd is involved with, if you're thinking of it proper incels and feeling like she won't have me, but she's a slut or whatever. Maybe that's how he's connected. I don't know, but I think
I still personally think Todd is just an idiot who just happens to be like a terrible guy, and he's not going to be connected to anything. He's a writer's red herring. Keep throwing him out there so that people don't.
They did that with Swordsman on Hawkeye. So
yes, they did.
Yeah. There is precedent for that.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I'm fully in agreement with that. He's probably going to be. I don't know if Todd's going to be the reason why the intelligentsia goes down. You know what I mean? It's just like he's such
No, I
a
think he's
dumb
just a red
character.
No,
herring.
I think he is not going to
He's
have
nothing.
effect on anything. He's just there
Yeah.
to be that type of guy. That's all.
Right. So he's just there to creep us all out, which he's doing a fantastic job. That is just oh god, that's creepy.
Because
Like,
he's right there to watch it all unfold and get a chuckle.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
yeah.
that's the episode. So I think you've definitely convinced me this should have been
This-
episode 8, and then 9 could have been the gala stuff, and then 10.
Well, this
Yeah.
should have been
whatever they had.
the gala should have been its own separate episode, episode 9, and then give your final in 10. Because what's one more episode between 9 and 10?
I mean,
really,
if you're
you know?
if you're a studio that doesn't want to pay people past this point, I guess that's what.
Yeah,
it
I guess that's true. Yeah.
I think
There is that.
What-
But then, of course, they're making an 18 episode Daredevil. So
Yes.
who knows
Yeah.
what they're.
I mean, you must be a
reasoning
fan
is.
of that.
Very, very
Yeah.
much. I'm excited.
So I mean, one of my biggest takeaways from this is one of the questions I really wanted to ask you here, Andrew, was like, what was your biggest thought and takeaway from this? Is there optimism for how this character Matt Murdock is going to be handled in future properties? Because you mentioned like it was like 3 different versions of it mixed together. How does that make you feel?
I think it makes sense because again, like we talked before about the Netflix series, which I really enjoyed, but it was for a mainstream audience, not as like it was kind of slightly impenetrable for people that didn't already know what they were getting. I loved it, but then again, I've read everything Daredevil, so it's like it was hitting the right notes. It was leaning into the Frank Millerisms, into the Brian Michael Bendis stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, this is what I like. Even leaning a little bit into the Kevin Smith stuff. And so they want to introduce the character to more of a 4-quadrant audience. This is the way you do it. Now, I think because the fact that the Daredevil series is called Born Again, I think they're going to bring it a little bit back more into the darkness.
Yeah.
But now that they've shown this very light Daredevil, they have that room to move. So as opposed to it just being one thing. So yeah, like I think the future's hopeful, and I think what they did here was smart. As I said, it's Disney. Disney likes to do things 4-quadrant, likes to be accessible to a wider audience. And this Daredevil goes down easier than the kicking in the dark, bloody knuckles. My mom's a nun. You have to read the comics to really understand that type shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree. I mean, like, just that I've never seen, because I don't know that much about Daredevil other than what I've seen, which is obviously not a good representation. And up until you bring up the fuckboy
I think
aspect,
everything has been an all right representation.
Okay.
It's just been like, again, Daredevil, the Netflix series I thought was great, but it was written specifically only for Daredevil fans.
Right.
It wasn't for people who didn't know who Daredevil was.
Right. And then versus the Ben Affleck one was like, oh, it was written for fuckboy fans, apparently.
Well, it was written and rewritten, and like Mark Steven Johnson just doesn't have a backbone and lets producers push him around. Or in the case of Ghost Rider, Nick Cage push him around. Or in the case of Simon Birch, fights with the writer, push him around. So, he is the king of bad adaptations with good intentions. That's basically, but that's, again, as I said, a story for a different time.
Yes. I'm looking forward to digging into that for sure.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna have you back for the Ben Affleck Daredevil and anything really Daredevil related.
The funny thing is, when we were doing our revisiting series during the pandemic, and I had the idea of like, let's revisit all the superhero movies. And then when we got to the era where it's like, we got to talk about Daredevil, are we going to do this? And the answer that you and I gave was like, I don't think we want to do a movie that we're just going to not appreciate at all.
Before we got to that point, we were like, we're just going to do the stuff that people mostly agree is good. Or if it's something like The Crow or Dread, like we're gonna do it because it would be weird not to have it represented on this list. But yeah, I think we've decided we're not gonna go to the movies that people like to make fun of. If other stuff already represents that era.
Yeah, because it's a difficult game. It's about like, okay, do we save it? Do we try to polish a turd? Like what happens? Or like You
But
know,
I
is
think we have
there
our in.
a gem
We have
there?
our in
But
if Andrew
yeah.
joins us.
that's
There
exactly
we go. There
it.
we go.
I do want
I
to see
can
what that
guide you
Daredevil.
through that mess. Yeah,
Excellent.
there we
Yes,
go.
I really look forward to that.
Oh my
Well,
God.
thank you very much for joining us. This was great, and as I said, I really love your work. So I'm just happy that you agreed
Well,
to
man,
join
I
us.
gotta say, yeah, thank you for listening to the show. It's again, we mentioned it on Back Issue Bloodbath that you and I kind of became friends, not in the regular sense, but just in like a mutual appreciation of each other's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's awesome.
so how can people find you online or what you're doing?
Okay, well, the easiest way is to go to geekcardshow.com. There we have articles, interviews, and access to all of our podcasts and previous podcasts, including Geek Card, which is done first as a live show on Friday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern on realityradio101.com. But then, of course, available later on Mondays as a podcast. When you hear this episode, this past week has already happened, so it'll be available on podcast for download right now. Interviewing Phil Lamar this week.
Oh,
So
awesome.
very excited
Nice.
about that.
That is
Yeah.
a big deal.
This is one of
That's
our
awesome.
big weeks, so definitely people should check it out.
Congratulations.
Thank
Yeah.
you
I
very
listen
much.
anyway, but I'm looking forward to that. That's great.
And then, of course, we have Back Issue Bloodbath, our comic-centric podcast, which drops Wednesdays, where myself and Petula Neal break down comics old and new. I forgot to mention on Geek Card, my co-host is Mr. Green, who's kind of been my frenemy since 2006. And then, and so those are the two main things. We also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/geekcardshow, where you can see video interviews of some of the interviews we've done on the show, as well as some interviews we've done at various events like Fan Expo and things like that.
Awesome.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Geekcard. And I'd say that's probably about it.
Awesome. And I'll put your stuff in the show notes of this episode as well. But yeah,
All right,
thank you very much. And
Yeah, thank you
very
for
much.
coming.
Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We're a part of the That Show Podcast Network with other great shows like Black Hole Films, Bad Gay Movies, Changing Reels. So please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our show, more shows. If you want to hear older episodes of this show, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. We're on all sorts of podcast platforms. So rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends, follow, all of the good stuff, and just have a great day. And
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.